Good morning, everyone. At least it's morning here in Santa Cruz, California. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our 50th annual Next Generation Jazz Festival. I'm sorry we can't be with you live at the Monterey Conference Center as we always are every year. But our next best thing is to try and join with you virtually, and we look forward to some exciting content for this year's Next Generation Jazz Festival. Part of what we're going to do is a conversation series, and I'm here this morning joined virtually from Connecticut with our 2020 Artist in Residence, Mr. Christian Sands. Christian, how you doing this morning?
How are you?
Christian, you've had a lot of experience with the Monterey Jazz Festival over the years. You've been a performer many times, both at the festival, both as a band leader, as a side person, as a part of special projects with our Earl Garner project a few years ago. In fact, you were even the musical director for our last Monterey Jazz Festival on Tour, which was over a year ago now, but it seems like a lifetime ago with everything that's going on these days.
Right.
So with that experience with Monterey, what does it mean for you being an artist in residence at the Monterey Jazz Festival?
It's a true honor. Every jazz musician dreams of performing at the top festivals, and being a part of the top festivals. And so when you can start checking those things off your list, and now to be the artist in residence for one of the major festivals in the world, it's a definite honor, and I'm really looking forward to anything that we're doing. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We've had lots of great musicians over the years as our artist in residence, people like Regina Carter, Christian McBride, just all sorts of folks. You have worked with all of these musicians many times and have helped build your career as a leader kind of on the shoulders of the generation that came before you. But before we get started with that, I'd like to back up a little bit and just ask you a little bit about your background and where you're from, what brought you into music generally, and what drew you to jazz specifically.
Sure. Well, I'll sort of answer it from the latter. I started playing piano when I was about 1 or 2 years old. And when I started with classical piano. I started Suzuki piano, like a lot of people have. And I learn the repertoire, Bach, Beethoven, as I was growing up. But what I would like to do would be to improvise on all the pieces. So, as all the classical aficionados will say, you're not supposed to solo on Bach pieces and Beethoven pieces, but I couldn't help myself. I like to create. I like to really expand and express myself. So I had a teacher who strongly recommended to my parents to put me in jazz studies. So I started jazz studies when I was about 6 or 7 years old. But it was like second nature to me. It felt comfortable. It felt like home to me because it reminded me of things that I kind of already knew. I knew about improvisation, or at least I was dabbing into just making things, creating things. I went to church a lot, so the rhythm and the feel reminded me of the gospel church as well. So a lot of these things resonated with what I was already involved in. And so I started performing when I was about 8 or 9. I think I had my first show performance doing a Harold Arlen tribute at Yale University, and that was the first gig I ever had, and it's been.
Did you ever perform with the classical repertoire, or is that something you just studied on your own?
I did. I performed with the Pop Symphony. I'm trying to remember how old I was. I was young. I think I was 11, maybe. With the New Haven Symphony, I performed with. I think I was younger than that, maybe 9. So I've kind of dabbed at classical orchestra anyway. But I just love how it sounds. I love it. It's a big influence on me, on my playing, on the way I hear harmony, the way I hear certain things. So I absolutely love it.
You had a specific jazz piano teacher?
I did. Growing up from that age of 7 on to 18, I was studying with Cadwallader out of Connecticut. Brilliant pianist. Later, I didn't realize it when I was studying with him, but he is a composer, so he composes for classical genre and jazz genre and all things in between. So studying with him really was studying compositors and, without really realizing it, Another teacher I had while in Connecticut, I did McBride, who was incredible, an incredible teacher, an incredible, as we know, an incredible player. But to be next to him and watch him work was really amazing. Later on was Dr. Billy Taylor, who I was mentored by for many years up until he passed away. And, it was
How did you meet Dr. Taylor?
So I met him from Rex Cadwallader, the teacher that I was talking about. He recommended that I go to a jazz camp. Unfortunately, when I was growing up, I was the only kid playing jazz, and I was the only kid playing at a certain level. So I was always the youngest person in the band by like 40 years tops. So, and I wanted to play with people my age, and a lot of people my age just starting or just learning how to play. And, so my teacher, Rex Cadwallader, he told me, well, there's this program called Jazz in July in UMass Amherst, which is a 2-week program. And Dr. Billy Taylor is the artistic director of that. And you should go and study with him, And so I didn't know at that time, I think I was maybe 14 and know who Dr. Billy Taylor was. I just saw this guy with big glasses and I was like, all right, I guess, but my father knew who he was and my grandmother knew who he was. They knew him. My mother knew him from the David Frost show. My father used to listen to him on his Saturday programs, So this was a big deal for my parents and for my grandparents. So, I went. I originally signed up for 1 week, and then I met him, and then the rest was history. We hit it off. I ended up staying the second week, and then I started traveling with him. We went to Washington, D.C., going to the Kennedy Center. I would take trips with him to New Jersey to see, William Patterson, meeting different musicians like Mulgrew Miller, hanging out with the older musicians, with Dave Brubeck, Marion Partland, Ramsey Lewis, and really just being around him and his peers in that culture. And it was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, my first memory of you was through Dr. Taylor. So that seemed to be the kind of would you agree that was kind of your launching pad into basically the rest of the world knowing who you are?
Definitely. I performed around the States when I was younger, but it wasn't until I really started following Dr. Miller, watching what he did. And he was introducing me to a lot of different programs in the jazz community, whether it was on a performance basis or on a business basis or a composing basis, and crossing genres. We would talk about just sitting down and we would talk about different styles of music. He loved hip hop. He loved some and he loved music. He was a music fan. And so
definitely a
anytime
musical omnivore.
Exactly. So anytime we were together, you never knew what was going to happen.
Now, did you actually study the piano with him, or was it more just a mentor relationship where you just kind of watched him and were with him? And
it was both. Yeah, it was very much both. Studying with him, very much like all the teachers I've had, they never sat me down to teach me repertoire. That was never a thing that they did. But what they did was they would always push my creativity, which I absolutely, I love that. I love when you can push my creative boundaries. I've always grown up with that. So with Dr. Billy Taylor, he would play certain things and he would tell me to play it back to him. And he wouldn't show me, he wouldn't sit me down and like, okay, first, your first finger's on F, your middle finger's on E flat or whatever. He wouldn't say that. He would play it, he'd sit me down and I would have to repeat it. And if it didn't sound the way he did, it was wrong, So it was very much taught oratorially, It was very much taught in that way where this is how I was taught. Dr. Billy teach me things that Art Tatum taught him. It was things that Tatum wouldn't sit him down and move his fingers to certain things. Tatum would just play it over and over again until he absorbed it. And so Dr. Taylor did the same thing with me. And essentially I do the same thing with my students now.
It's the classic jazz continuum. You're paying it forward.
That's
now,
it. Right.
Did you? I assume you probably studied music in college, but I don't know that for sure. I actually don't know if you went to a music school or not.
I did. I went to Manhattan School of Music for my undergrad and my graduate degrees, and it was a lot of fun. Especially the pianist that I was around. During that time when I was in school. Many pianists that we love. Sullivan Fortner was in class with me. Sam Harris, John Street. There was a lot of different people. Moreau Sprague. A lot of beautiful, beautiful pianists. And other artists. Ambrose Akinmusiri was in school when I just got. Linda O was in school. Fabian Almazan. That's another great pianist, and we all were studying.
At school?
Oh yeah, and Miho, yeah, Miho Hazama was my class. So it was a lot of fun to be in school, and then especially in New York City during that time because everybody was around. I was studying with Jason Moran at the time, and then later on Vijay Iyer, and New York was a great time to be studying.
Who were some of the as you were coming up, just from a listening standpoint, who were the players that you were drawn to on recordings and whose music really spoke to you?
Well, starting out, I'd have to say Herbie Hancock, but he was with Miles Davis. My father loved Miles Davis. So Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, Horace Silver, a lot of the music that I grew up playing with in New Haven used to play with Horace when he was in Hartford, Connecticut. So a lot of the older musicians I used to play with were some of his side guys. So Horace Silver, I definitely listened to. Elmo Hope. I loved Elmo Hope. Aside from pianists, I used to play with Jackie McLean as well because he was in Hartford.
Yeah, he was up in Connecticut, right?
Exactly. Certain sound that was happening. Wynton Kelly, Ahmad Jamal, definitely, like a lot of Ahmad Jamal. And I had met Branford Marsalis at a master class, and I ended up having to play, and he was asking who my influences were. And at that time, I was really into Ahmad Jamal. I can't remember how old I was. Then he asked me who Ahmad Jamal listened to. You should find out the backstory. Who did Ahmad Jamal listen to, influence his playing, And I found out it was Fats Waller. So then I listened to Fats Waller. And then I started studying with the great pianist Ron Burton, who used to play with Rahsaan Roland Kirk for many, 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 many
Sure,
years.
I remember seeing Ron Burton with Rahsaan years ago.
Yeah, and so Ron used to come to my house and teach me piano, and he would teach me Jelly Roll Morton. He would teach me James P. Johnson, Willie the Lion Smith. So then he started breaking that down, And then, of course, I was listening to my teachers as well, Ron Burton. I was listening to Billy Taylor. I was listening to Brubeck. I was listening to Mary McPartland, Ahmad Jamal, of course, Ramsey Lewis, And it wasn't until I played Oscar Peterson, I was like, well, now I have to listen to him. Nobody plays piano like that, so I need to check Oscar Peterson out. And it was Oscar Peterson for a long time until I went to college and started studying with Moran. And then it was Cecil Taylor and Paul Bley and Andrew Hill and Jackie Byard. And, so I listened to as many pianists as I could. And
I'm sure when you were in New York and in college, you probably, hit the clubs and found the jam sessions and all of that sort of thing. You also clearly had a mentorship with Christian McBride in his trio, and I think that's probably when everybody got to know who you were. How did you end up meeting Christian?
Well, funny enough, my first year in New York, my first week in New York when I went to Manhattan School of Music, a friend of mine, Jesse Simpson, who's a fantastic drummer, composer, and cymbal maker, makes really great cymbals. At the time, we were classmates, and he had heard that Christian McBride was doing a listening session at the Museum of Jazz in Harlem. I think that's where it was. And so he's like, after class, let's go and check him out. So we went, and there's a ton of people, and I think he was playing some James Brown, of course.
Yeah.
And right. And after the listening session, it was great. I mean, he's playing different things from different people and breaking music down, and, really just, it was excellent. And after that, we got a chance to meet him. So I went up to him. I'm like, "Hi, Mr. McBride. My name is Christian as well. Pianist, and this old piano in the corner." He's like, "Oh, you're a pianist. Why don't you play something?" And now I should have said no, but you're excited. You're young. You're like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'm gonna do it." And I went to sit down at the piano, and there were missing keys, and pedals were gone, and there was dust everywhere. It was like the worst audition ever. So I ended up trying to play something, as best as I could. And he looked at me, he was like, "Yeah, all right." Kind of like keep practicing kind of thing, right? And it wasn't until my junior year in college that I was asked to be a part of a group, Juilliard. They were auditioning for this camp that Christian McBride was the artistic director of the Jazz Aspen program. So originally, Chris Bowers, a great pianist and composer, Chris Bowers was in that group.
Yeah. Chris came through the Next Generation Jazz Orchestra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, full circle. And Chris is a great friend of mine as well. And so he had called me. He's like, "Hey man, I can't make this. Can you make it?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right, cool. I don't think I'm doing anything." So we auditioned, we got in, and the group was sent, and I was expecting Chris to go with the group, but make that either. So I was like, I'll just go, not knowing that this was a program run by Christian McBride that he was heavily involved in. And so once we went, I met him again. I reminded him of the story. We started playing, we started playing a little bit. That's also where I met Ulysses Owens as well. And then fast forward a few months after that, I was asked to do Mary McPartland's show, Piano Jazz. And unfortunately, she was ill at the time. So she sent her substitute, who was McBride. So we ended up playing there. And maybe a month or two later, I got a call from his manager asking if I was available to play with him and his band inside straight at the Jazz Standard for a week. And so that was it. That was the first gig I ever did with him.
Yeah. What year was that?
I want to say 2010, 2009, something like that. Yeah.
And you've since gone on. You now have your own band, making your own records. You are establishing yourself as a leader and one of the bright lights of jazz piano. To get to that point, you have to have a lot of skill sets developed. One and only one of which is being a fantastic piano player. As you progressed in still your young career as a person and as a musician, what are some of the attributes that you find important over and above, of course, being a strong and dedicated musician? What do you need to have in your makeup to really be able to establish yourself as a working musician and as a leader in this music?
Well, one, you just have to be honest. You have to be as honest to the music as possible first. You got to want to do it. It's something that just doesn't, just happen. You have to really work for it. You have to work hard. You have to study. You have to practice. Because the thing is, the last thing you want is to get the opportunity and you're not ready for it. So practice, work hard, listen. I mean, a lot of the research that I do is just listening, go out and see different bands. If somebody's coming to town, go see them. You might not play and it's okay, but you're absorbing all the information. You're listening to all the information they're giving to you. You're listening to the history of the music, and where they're coming from. And then research, find out, okay, well, what's their favorite records, or where did you hear that particular line or harmonies from, find out, especially now, because now there's social media, you can just, hit any of these artists up, and hopefully they get back to you. But a lot of it was just hard work, practice, grinding, and really, really wanting to do this. I really wanted to be a pianist. I wanted to be a performer. I wanted to be an entertainer. I wanted to be an artist. When I was young, a lot of my friends were going outside and I was excited. And it wasn't because I had to practice, because I wanted to practice. My thing is like, go and play wall ball or anything you want to do. I'm going to sit inside and play and create, because I really like to do that. Then when they would come inside, I'd play for them, so I never really left my piano. It was always, that was my goal. My goal was to just constantly create and constantly just learn as much as I could from instrument.
And that was a self-motivation on your part. You weren't forced to do it by your parents or anything.
Yeah, it was definitely all me. I mean, my parents. What helps is that when you have a supportive background, my parents were super supportive. Any performances I had to do or had to, anything I had to do, my parents were willing and able to do. They drive me. If I had a gig in DC, we would just pack the car, pack the keyboards, everything to DC. Or my brother is a drummer as well. So when I was performing, my brother was there as well. he's 5 years younger than me. So anytime I was performing, you just hear you would hear a sneeze, and then you hear sticks fall, because he always has drumsticks with him.
You got it. Yeah.
But there was all this support that was always there, for the both of us. When he would perform, we would all pack the car up, let's go. Didn't matter when it was. We figured out. My parents figured out, how to juggle work and jobs and everything, but taking their kids to practice. And it's like any parent that wants their child to be a football player or a basketball player or in the hockey league or something like that. There's all these things that that help. All the support, and it wasn't forced upon. If I wanted to stop, I could have very much stopped, and they wouldn't have had any. They would have said okay, And so I think with that type of love that they give you and support that they give you, you can really explore and do what you really want to do.
And it wasn't forced upon you.
At all.
That's great. I wondered in your studies and when you're out in the clubs or you're at a jam session or something and everybody's playing, whether it's jazz standards or whether it's the jazz repertoire of the day, whether it's Wayne Shorter tunes or Joe Henderson tunes, how important was it for you, and do you still feel it's important to have that whole library of standards and jazz repertoire under your belt to just be able to sit down and know all those tunes? Is that still a kind of a badge of honor among players that somebody can call out an obscure a Wayne Shorter tune and you're going to know it?
Yeah, I think it changes. In my opinion, it fluctuates, because in the beginning you should know all the standards, because you need every opportunity to play as much as possible. You need to know as you can, because it's also extremely important for your development, your musical development and your growth. So growing up, it was standards all day, because you never knew who you were going to play with. You never knew, you didn't have any set gigs, so you were just showing up and, hey, you mind if I play? You mind if I play a song with you? Or somebody would bring you along and say, oh, I have this kid and he plays really well, and he can sit in with us, And a lot of them were either blues heads at a certain point, that you kind of get to other tunes, you start getting into the American Songbook, you start getting into certain things, and it's great to learn those, because it gives you the tools you need to be able to, it gives you the language, it gives you the history of the music, it gives you how to get around certain chord progressions, how to hear certain things, how to feel certain things, different types of grooves, going to the Brazilian bag, I guess if you want to call it that, and playing samba, playing, bossa novas, going to the Latin jazz bag and playing rumba clave, playing son clave, playing merengue and bachata, playing all these different styles. Like now you're starting to get into, a wide range of things. And then you really find out what you're interested in, what you're not interested in. But all those standards stay with you, because that is the building blocks that's your foundation.
Yeah.
And today it's important, because even for me, like I'll go back and revisit some of these standards, because it's, my mom always told me something. She always said good music is good music, and it would always stand the test of time. So there's a reason why these people are still playing these standards. And when I play them, there are these elements of beauty. There's elements of raw emotion. There's these elements of surprise. I love playing them and finding different ways to express myself through the writings of Cole Porter or Duke Ellington, or George Gershwin. There's so many different ways to approach it. So, and it's wonderful.
As you've progressed with your own career and your own music, your own bands and your own records and your own compositions, Um, what are you looking for? Like when you're looking towards your next record, I'm sure you want to think what is going to make Christian Sands distinctive? What can I do to make this record stand out? How do you look at not only the instrumentation you might use in your band, the focus of your compositions, and do you stick mostly with original compositions on your records? And also, I know that you delve a little bit away from the acoustic piano and into some electric keyboards, and maybe you could talk about that for just a minute and how you see that being able to expand your palette in your musical vision.
Sure. Well, I'm a composer at heart. That's what I do. So the way I create music and how I go with albums and just ideas is really about a story. What story am I trying to tell? You know, with all the records that I've come out with, you know, I wasn't thinking, okay, I'm going to do a quartet record. I'm going to do a trio record. If you've noticed, there's a mixture. But what I loved was the story. You know, the first record, Reach, from Mac Avenue, you know, that first record was, where am I going? Where am I reaching for? What am I reaching for? You know, am I going forward? Am I going backward? This is the very first record. This is one of those make or break records. You know, if this doesn't do well, then, you know, I'm no longer going to be on Mac Avenue. I'm no longer going to be, you know, it had a lot of weight to it. So it was, it sort of told me, okay, well, reach to all of your influences, you know, go to all your influences. So go to the past, go to the present, go to where you want to be, you know, take all the things that you had growing up, you know, playing with quartets, playing with quintets, playing with guitar trios, playing with, you know, experimental things, you know, playing with, electronics. You know, when I was in college, I used to have a house EDM band with my roommate. So that part of that also comes into that as well. So everything I do is a part of my life, you know, and then you also want to push yourself as much as you could, you know, and so that all has to play, that all comes into play when you're really trying to tell the story. So, you know, after Reach, what was next? Okay, well, Seconds, after we finished that, you know, where are we now? Now I'm the second album. I'm faced with a follow-up. Do I repeat what I did? Do I not? Do I completely different direction? Do I, you know, what's the story? You know, and Facing Dragons was all about facing your uncertainties and facing your fears and facing things that the unknown, you know.
Do you use an outside producer when you make your records, or do you do it all yourself?
I do everything myself. I do have some advisors, you know, like or / co-producers, you know. But for the most part, everybody just like, yeah, you got it. So everything is pretty much on me, which is wonderful because I get to really do and be what I'd like, you know. So it works out.
The last time I heard your group was at the beginning of the year in New York City at Disney's Club, and you had Marvin Sewell on guitar added to your trio. I thought that really was a stroke of genius, and that he brought a real sense of nuance and a different kind of a sound to the band. And I'm wondering and hoping, is that the group that you're going to bring out to Monterey for the festival this September?
Is the group we're going to bring. You know, I'm really looking forward to it. I love the addition of Marvin. You know, I'm a fan of his song, you know, since Cassandra Wilson, and there's a project with him and Jason Moran. I mean, Marvin is just absolutely incredible and unique. And also a kindred spirit, you know, this is kind of how I hear music. And so it's great when you find somebody that fits, that understands it the way you do, that thinks of it the way you do, that has that certain soul. In Christian McBride, that same exact thing where you meet somebody and it's like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. You can go anywhere.
Right.
Sushi Nakamura, same way. Clarence Penn, the same way. There's a certain brotherhood that is happening. Marvin, it was great to have an instrument that, especially as a pianist, because piano, there's that whole thing of piano and guitar can never get along because they're always in each other's ways.
Right.
You just have to figure out
what voicing are you to use.
You have to figure out how to play with it. Exactly. Like where, what chord voicings are you using? Is it rubbing? Is it not rubbing? Are you doing a flat 9, flat 5, or not? With Marvin, the wonderful thing that we have is that we're game for anything. So if he's playing a flat 9, flat 5, and I'm playing a sharp 9, sharp 5, we don't care. Because it has a certain realness to it. It has a certain color, it has a certain rub that we don't shy away from, And when you have that, and also Marvin's ear too. So if I'm doing something, Marvin will either play on top of me or play below. I mean, he's really a master at that. And then I am the same way with him, where if he's playing somewhere, I'll try to surround him with certain things. And so really makes playing fun.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to hearing you and hearing that group at the Monterey Jazz Festival this September. Christian, I'd like to thank you for sharing a few words with all of us today. We're going to wrap up this first conversation, and we'll have another one after it. And thank you so much for sharing your insights.